Hello, this is CurtisCroweThePhotoPro here with Photo Gear. Today we're going to be on location at Bloomfield Hills to do an on-field test of the Canon 6D. Now, what is so great about the Canon 6D? It's the most inexpensive full-frame line on the Canon market, which is great for anybody who's trying to get full-frame on a budget. It's got some great features that you don't see in the other full-frame cameras. Some of the great features that come with it are the GPS and Wi-Fi, which personally I use every day. This thing does pack a lot of punch. It's got a better megapixel sensor than a lot of the other inexpensive Canon bodies. So it's great to see that Canon is moving out of their old 18 megapixel sensor bin that they've just been slapping in every inexpensive camera they had. But how does this sensor and this camera really perform? I have to say I'm extremely happy with it. This isn't my first one. I've had 3 of them. First one, the sensor did have a hot pixel. Wasn't a big deal. It only showed up in video mode. And what a hot pixel is it's a lot like a dead pixel, but it's on your sensor. One of the pixels show up as a hard color, either red, blue, or green, but it's on the sensor, so it shows up in all my videos. So I got it serviced, and they just went ahead and switched it out instead of actually replacing it. So I was able to open up a second one, and now that one got stolen back in April of 2014. And so now I am back up to my third one, and I gotta say, the low light capability of this camera with the processor it has and the full frame ability it has is really beyond compare. But how does it do on a regular day when it's daylight out and I don't need the low light capability? Well, let's take a look here. Sorry about the minor distraction, just saw a squirrel getting attacked by birds. It was exciting, more exciting than this. All right, so how well does this really compare in regular days when you're out and you don't need ISO 12,800? Well, we're gonna take a look at that. All right, and as you can tell, you know, the depth of field is extremely shallow with this lens. You'll see that more so with this lens than a crop sensor because the larger sensor really does affect your depth of field. The more angles in which light comes in, the more blur it causes. So here's a couple sample shots. And if you do want to see that 12,800 ISO, I took a picture during Disney. Even at 12,800 ISO, the highest that most cameras can go, the grain on it is so subtle compared to most other cameras, even compared to the 5D Mark III, that it really allows you to push that ISO to new heights without actually affecting your image quality nearly as much. Some of the other advantages that are unmentioned really by a lot of photographers is the weight. Now, for whatever reason, people think, oh, this is heavier, it's gotta be better. That's not necessarily true. I'm a wedding photographer. I will carry this camera for 6, 8, sometimes 10 or 12 hours on a wedding shoot. And sometimes that extra weight, I mean, I put a battery pack on here, I have good glass on here, I put a flash on here, or I do off-camera flash. That's a lot of weight to have on here to be carrying all effing day. So as a professional photographer, I don't want a bunch of weight on my camera. That extra 10 to 15% of weight that you see on this compared to, let's say, a Canon 7D or a 5D Mark III really makes a big difference. I mean, there's been times where I was newer at wedding photography and I carried my camera all day, even with a shoulder strap, you still carry it all day. And not only was my arm tired the next day, but it was practically a noodle. I couldn't do anything with my arm at all because it was so tired and it was so exhausted because of that weight. So that's another huge advantage to the Canon 6D compared to any other high-end full-frame camera is it's lighter. So once you start tacking on those accessories, it doesn't bother you as much. Weight makes a big difference when you're on the job or you're doing a corporate event and you're lugging this thing around all day. It makes a big difference. And for those people that think a heavier camera is a better camera to do on the job, I have to say I completely disagree. And I think you would too if you had to carry a heavy camera, full metal camera all day. Another thing with this camera is not all cameras give you is silent shutter. Now, silent shutter doesn't really mean silent, but it means quieter. And I'm gonna let you do a sound test of exactly how that sounds. So I'm gonna hold this up to the mic and I'm gonna give you first a regular shutter sound. That's how it sounds normally. And if you wanna hear it in continuous mode, we'll do a couple continuous shots. Not a big fan of the sound. I gotta say that's probably one of my least favorite things about this camera is it sounds terrible when the shutter goes off. Sounds like dead puppies. So what we are gonna do is we're gonna put on the silent shutter. Now I usually run in silent shutter because what I typically shoot isn't high action stuff. I'm not doing sports. I'm not doing anything like that. I mean, sometimes if I'm running and gunning at a wedding, I'll put it in regular continuous, or this camera doesn't have high speed continuous, but I'll put it in regular continuous and rock that. But typically, especially with ceremonies, I want to be as quiet as possible because I don't want people to really notice me. I want to get genuine, candid photos, so I don't want to be seen or heard. So a lot of times I'll put it on the quieter setting. So here's the quiet setting. It is a bit quieter. It mostly sounds different. Let's do a side-by-side comparison. So here is 3 shots of the loud, and then here's 3 shots of the quiet. So you kind of hear that? It sounds like a sponge is hitting something instead of, you know, something hard hitting something in there. I know, very technical here, but still, those are the sound comparisons. I hope that helps you determine like how it sounds. Again, if you have a 70D, I love the 70D click. The 5D Mark III click is awesome. The 1DX, I've heard that in person. It sounds like a machine gun. It's like, but that's also $6,000. You are paying $6,000. It better sound awesome if you're paying $6,000 for a nicer shutter sound. All right, now the only other thing that I really don't like about this camera is its autofocusing system. It's not as good as the 5D Mark III, the 70D, the 7D, or most other cameras. Its AI servo mode is a little bit slow, and we'll show you that in just a second. Another thing I want to mention though is its follow focus in video mode. Now, this is no big surprise that it doesn't have following focus in video mode because only a couple cameras have them currently. The 70D Mark II, the 70D, and the SL1 are the only cameras I'm aware of that have follow focus or continuous focus during video mode. And to kind of piggyback on what I said earlier, the AI servo mode, again, is a little sluggish with that, which we're about to show you. So how we're going to test the AI servo mode is we're going to go ahead and focus on something off in the distance, take a picture. Immediately on taking that picture, I'm going to change where the focusing point is supposed to be and see how many photos it takes for it to jump from a distance focus to something that's closer. And to do that, we're going to use the grass and a tree because both grass and trees are very texture based. Blades of grass are very sharp, bark is very sharp. So let's go ahead and show that off right now. All right, so it didn't take that much for it to focus properly. It is a little unpredictable. When I did a test earlier outside of us actually doing the shooting, it took 3 to 4 shots before it actually found focus. Where this time I only got 1 blurry shot from the time in which I shot the grass to the time in which I shot the bark, and I'll show you that on the screen right now. Lastly, the final thing I want to show you is the GPS and Wi-Fi capabilities on this camera. The Wi-Fi and GPS is very useful on this. I know I touched on it a little bit earlier, but there is nothing like being able to offer them, hey, do you want a copy of this photo that I took of either you or whomever? And them being like, yeah, sure, wow, that's a great shot. And then they put it on their Facebook. And the great thing is, with the Wi-Fi, you're texting them the photo. They now have your number in order to go, hey, I need a photographer for my nieces or my cousins or whoever's wedding. In order to market yourself, they have your phone number. You already put an impression on them. You showed them what your quality of work can be, and you are now putting a name behind your work. And that is invaluable. And I really wish every Canon camera had Wi-Fi because that has been worth its weight in gold for me. With the Canon 6D, you do get GPS, and GPS is really great for tagging when you're on the run, especially like if you're in a new neighborhood or something like that and you just get struck with inspiration and you want to remember where that spot is, Lightroom can actually take those GPS coordinates and tag it on a map. So you can actually pull up your GPS information and go back to that location. I mean, how many times have we shot somewhere like, oh, I really wish I remember where that photo was. You can go back and you can see all the photos you took in that area, and it's really great. And with the Canon 6D, you'd think that'd take up a lot of battery life, but you can really control how much battery life it really takes because you can tell it to tag every 10 seconds, 5 seconds, 1 second, 30 minutes. There's a whole wide range of how often your photos actually update the geotagging part. So if I do it for every second, yes, it's gonna drain my battery a little bit faster, but the great thing is I'll be able to see the exact location I was in. Once I take that photo, I can see all the photos I've taken in that area. It's a real good way to archive your locations for shoots. Some other Canon cameras can do this, like the 70D for example, but you need additional hardware. The hardware that you have to buy costs additional money. Well, with the Canon 6D, it's built in. And you don't have anything coming out of your camera. You don't have anything that could get caught on something, snap or break. So that's another great advantage to the Canon 6D opposed to some of the other cameras that are out there. So that's it for today's field review of the Canon 6D. Let me know down below in the comment section what you think of this camera. Do you already own it? Are you checking it out for a friend? Or are you personally interested in purchasing this? If this is something that may have pushed you towards going ahead and buying that, feel free to let me know down below. If you like this video and like to see more content like it, go ahead and hit that like button, hit subscribe. We come out with 1 to 2 videos every day, Monday through Friday. This is Curtis Crowe, the Photo Pro, and as I always do, toodles.
Squirrel! Anyway.